So the agenda for today is, first of all, the poll. Where are you on your journey? The second is, what is this newish duty that we've all got to abide by? And then the context, just setting the scene. Climate change, net zero, nature recovery. What are these things? How do they fit together? Number four, how do we get started? How do we make progress? And if we're already well on the way, how do we go that little bit further? And who's out there to help share and support us along the way? And I do apologize, my croak is still here. So that was from when I had, it's basically long COVID and it's a bit croaky, but we're there now. So the poll, these are the results. And beautiful bell curve there. So we've got some people who are in the really not too sure, came along because I want to find out how to get started, through to the just doing something, not sure if it's right, but very willing, want to know a bit more. And then we've got one or two who are in the expert category where, I'm shaking in my boots. Basically, today is for everybody, but I really would like to link you back to um, Andrew Maliphant's talk a couple of weeks ago, which you'll get the link to. And he's really dealt with more of the expert work. So poll our current states, and on to the next slide. So let's have a look then. This is the biodiversity duty on parish and town councils. And for those of you that are clerks that have done your SILCA, you know that, and those of you who are councillors, know that it's always helpful to have reference to the legislation. So councils were to complete their first consideration of action by the 1st of January of this year. So guidance was coming out at the end of last year that was basically, whether you've heard of this or not, get it on your agendas, do something that shows that you've started to consider it by the 1st of January 2024. And that came in the government guidance issued on the 17th of May 2023. And that was the government following up on requirements from the 2021 Environment Act. And for any of you that were in Wales, it's the 2016 Environment Act, Section 6. And the 2021 Environment Act confirmed the 2006 Natural Environment and Rural Communities Act. So all I've done there is really read out the slide, but I would like to add something on there, that for those councils or councillors who are feeling like you've got an awful lot on your plate already, and really this is for the larger councils, the higher councils, to do, and we'll just do what we need to do. It is actually true that there is no audit or no consequence other than to the environment and the world and all the people in it, of course. That there is no consequence from not having done it. However, obviously that's a negative, and we want to do it. So I'm starting from a perspective really of what the Act sets out. For targets designed to recover the natural world in England across 4 priority areas. So air quality. So there we might think about our roads, whether we have good public transport, whether we have a lot of coaches coming in, but then they might be of a green variety. So not quite so bad, but nevertheless, air quality is one of the 4 areas. Biodiversity, and that's specifically really our focus for today. Water, and later on I have a slide that refers to, but I'll say it now, not just our green spaces, but also our blue spaces. And many of our parish councils are involved with flood work, for example, and flood mitigation or flood planning. So that's part of biodiversity. And waste management. So again, it's to set the context that biodiversity is being considered in amongst these range of issues. And then that biodiversity net gain greater than 10% is now required for planning permissions granted in England from November 2023. There are a few exceptions, such as a simple home extension. But largely what this means is that the planning authority will be testing whether the biodiversity net gain is planned for by the developer or the applicant. And it doesn't have to be on that site, it can be anywhere. So there will be opportunities for parish and town councils to consider with their higher authorities, particularly the planning authority, where that biodiversity net gain or the financing for it, because they can use credits, where that will take place within the district. So, and I'm saying district simply because that's what my parish relates to. But whoever is the planning authority, it's well worth working with them and working out whether you can acquire any resources through this biodiversity net gain requirement from the planning from the applicant. So nature recovery, a word that we often hear, but I've rarely seen it defined, so I looked it up and included it in the slides. So the Leverhulme Centre for Nature Recovery at Oxford University defines it as nature recovery is the activity of helping life on Earth to thrive by repairing human relationships with the rest of the natural world. So that's you can see that's a very strategic sort of statement and activity. Hampshire County Council says it's about building resilient landscapes through natural restoration and nature-based solutions. And that gives you a hint. This is at county level. It could be that you have a national park or a national landscape, and in your that your area is within. And national landscapes, for those of you that aren't familiar, is the new term for areas of outstanding natural beauty. It's county council level, could be borough council or unitary authority. And I've got that in quotes that they lead at landscape level. And we all have our role to play. So this is about understanding where we fit in our world of parish and town councils. And then there are these three words: climate change, greenhouse gas emissions, carbon net zero. And I'm just wondering if we're aware of what the difference is between them. And John, I didn't prepare you with this in advance, but is there any way of asking a few people what they think is the difference? Just because it would be nice to have a little bit more engagement, but I don't know if the tech allows for
Yeah,
it.
yeah, 100%. Just yeah, just throw it into the chat.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
jump
Brilliant.
into the chat, and yeah, put in their description or what you obviously got some experts in there, so they might be getting it right. Yeah, what they think the difference is. Tara says carbon net zero set by the government. Most people don't. Yeah, Emma. Is climate change caused by carbon emissions? Not sure. Gordon Scalf, biodiversity is about increasing the amount of wildlife and conserving what we have. There are some links to climate change, as some of our wildlife is struggling with the changing climate. These all linked to greenhouse emissions. They're all linked, says yes. Good. George, yeah, there's some really good answers in here, a whole bunch of answers. Climate change to me is the umbrella overarching topic. Gas house emissions are specific to gas released. Carbon net zero can include carbon you emit and steps taken to offset this. Yeah. Nikki says change in weather patterns. Gas emissions is probably contributing. Carbon net zero is what we are aiming for. What do you think of that, Amanda?
I think it's brilliant. You see, and that's the whole point of today, is to be as engaged as we can be with a large number of people on Zoom. It's not quite as intimate as going into breakout rooms and so on, but at least we've all had a chance to think about these things. Essentially, what people have said is correct. There are more than one gas that leads through emissions to problems. Let's put it that way in the simplest terms. And carbon is but one of them. So we often talk about carbon net zero, but actually there's methane and other sources of what goes on to become climate change. And it's the climate change that then doesn't help the biodiversity that we were already busy losing through uses of things like pesticides and other forms of management of our environment in a way that was just too harsh for nature to, survive and thrive in a way that we all would like it too. So that I've tried to put it in plain speak there rather than in academic speak or expert speak because I'm trying to speak to the majority of people who really haven't yet felt that they're confident enough to talk about these things. So, how can I find out more? So, the first is many of us will have access to the Society of Local Council Clerks, and they're currently offering through another organisation, through a third party who are the experts, a carbon literacy qualification, and I thoroughly recommend it. Even if you have one counsellor or two counsellors trained in it, who could then present to the rest of the counsellors, for example. And I'm personally looking forward to qualifying to teach it, to tutor on it myself. And then the local association of NALC. So, for example, in my area, Gloucestershire Association of Parish and Town Councils offers training. And then really would like to highlight for you all the national work that Andrew Malifont's doing, and more of that probably in um, his part. But the Great Collaboration is a national, its ambition is of national reach. And it's looking at how we can all work together on this, because really, and sharing my punchline with you for the end, is we're all in this together. We don't need to be on our own doing it. And we should work together to do it. And that's what Andrew came up with, knowing that this was going to be coming in terms of our duty of biodiversity, and set this up over a year ago now. And what started this year is the weekly banter sessions that are on Zoom. So anybody can take part in that, and I have included the link to that in my next somewhere in my next slides. The Great Collaboration itself is like a huge database, so people can deposit into it any resources they think would be useful to others, and then others can obviously use it like a library. So it's a great tool for sharing, and it's being piloted currently in the East Anglia 4 counties. So those people who said they were from that area, you've really got to get a chance to get involved with the Great Collaboration directly. Any one of us can go to the free weekly banter sessions. They are on Wednesdays from 12 until 1 o'clock on Zoom. And so, what is this duty? Let's get into the detail now. Parish and town councils must consider what they can do to conserve and enhance biodiversity. They should agree policies and specific objectives based on that consideration. And then they should act to deliver their policies and achieve those objectives. So that's what you must do. But as I said at the start, the fly in the ointment really here is that if you don't do anything, there's no consequence anyway. But if we all believe that this is something that we should do, then let's do it because we should do it and we want to do it, not because we must do it because somebody else has told us to. And parish and town councils, this has come from the government guidance in May of 23. We are not obliged to publish a report, though higher councils are. We are to have completed our first consideration by the 1st of January this year. And if you haven't done it already, then know that it needs to be done soon. We are to agree policies and objectives as soon as possible after this. And we are to reconsider our selected actions within 5 years of that first consideration. Unless, of course, you're more ambitious and you want to do it more often. But that's where maybe the 5 years came from that John mentioned in terms of the nature survey that I think it was Liz was involved in doing with her parish. Then as a minimum to comply, it's suggested that you have biodiversity as an agenda item for the council. So if you haven't already, if somebody was to audit this and to go back through your minutes and see that you have at least considered biodiversity as an agenda item, that in itself is enough to comply with that deadline of the 1st of January. Obviously, you can't turn the clocks back, so long as you've done something, this year, then okay, so you missed the 1st of January. Audit what you're already doing. We are really surprised when we go through all the things parish and town councils are already doing. You're doing so much, you just need to put it into one place in a report. And you don't even need to publish a report, it's just really a checklist for yourself. And then remember blue spaces as well as green spaces, as I mentioned earlier. Please do, when you're auditing, remember that you probably are doing quite a bit in relation to either emergency planning or flood mitigation or thinking about river pollution. And even if you've got litter picking going on in your parish, it's stopping the litter from blowing into the river that will get out to the sea. So do remember to keep these things in mind when you're auditing, and you'll be amazed at how much you're already doing. So then agree what further steps you want to take. And some people, bearing in mind the challenge I just set you as to the definitions, if you think about how you defined how climate change impacts on biodiversity, then you can see that anything to do with climate change that you're doing can go into biodiversity action planning as well. So that's when we really open things up. And here you've got community energy schemes, you've got all sorts of things that you could be doing, taking on woods, like Charles mentioned. I mean, some really ambitious things there. But each of you have got a very different environment, community, etc. So there is no one right answer to this. It's really about knowing your own area and seeing what you can achieve. So on this slide, as a minimum to comply, I've just added a few additional things in here so it's complete for those people that aren't hearing the talk. So for example, there's a click to the policy document that my own council, Bolton on the Water where I'm a councillor, agreed this policy, the biodiversity policy, in December, and it was based on a model policy that it received through the work of Andrew Malafont. The model policy is available through SLCC and through NALC, and it came with some guidance attached from our local Gloucestershire Association of Parish and Town Councils, who are also offering training, and they've given me permission to use their materials and to advertise their training as well. So audit what you're already doing. Make it enjoyable and engage people. And rather than see it as yet another thing on the to-do list, see it as something that could be great fun. So audit what you're already doing. Whether you make a list, or you're writing a formal note, or you're using a map and going around and marking things on a map. Walk around the parish. Ask for photos to be sent in. Engage your communities. Look at the scout group, rainbows. Ask schools because it's part of their curriculum. Look at your eco groups that may exist within your parish, and also your churches who've got an eco church scheme. So I've already said, remember your blue spaces as well as your green. Perhaps you might like to invite the water company to come into the council to speak. What are they doing on sewage and pollution? Or what are they doing with a view to making sure that we've got the infrastructure necessary for the new developments, the new housing developments especially, that we know from the first few indicators from the new government. This is going to be something of significance to most of us. So why not invite them in? And then agree what further steps to take to conserve and enhance biodiversity in your parish. So, ideas to enhance your council's actions, just a few here. Reach out to higher level councils and bodies. Their plans will be searchable. So a quick Google search, other search engines are available. Identify the key officer. Now, some counties, some higher authorities are just recruiting people now. Some will have had an officer in place for a couple of years or more, especially if you're in a protected landscape. And is there a cabinet lead councillor? So they will embrace parish and town councils getting involved with them because they can't deliver it without us. And are we in a protected landscape? So, what biodiversity or nature recovery plans are already in place that cover your parish? So, for example, are there identified wildlife corridors, dark skies, pollution? None of those things demonstrate respect for parish boundaries. So reach out and extend a warm hand, friend of, I can't say it, warm hand of friendship to neighbouring parishes and share the efforts. Contact local voluntary groups or individuals who are working on nature conservation projects. I have Greystones Nature Reserve here next to me, which is run by our local wildlife trust. And most places will have something like this nearby, even if not directly in your parish. And there'll be a wealth of both knowledge and ideas, but also perhaps volunteers as well. Conduct a biodiversity audit, which you may have the skills within your parish to do yourselves, but it may be that just like Liz did, uh, going and getting some funding to do this. And I've already hinted that maybe with the biodiversity net gain requirement on planning applications, it could be that the planning authority has got funding and is looking at ways to use that biodiversity net gain credit monies in order to do some biodiversity improvement in other areas. And you could be a recipient of that. And then review your contracts, your procurement activities and methods. For example, if you have a contract for maintaining your verges, is it a question of looking at no mow May? Do you want to extend it forward or back into April as well now with climate change? Do we want to say no chemicals or define where those are used? So it's elements like that. We planted a whole load of bulbs, for example, in our throughout our parish, but then it meant having to remember to tell the contractors where those bulbs were, so they didn't run their mowers over them. It's simple things really, but getting started, you can see that you're doing a lot of this already. But maybe review your council's investment policy. Doing the carbon literacy qualification really showed how much where you invest your monies and which banks you choose to use can make a big difference in terms of the monies that are available for organisations and industries to see as growth areas where they can get access to funding. So by making a point about moving your investment and your funding, it's public monies, it's just about investing wisely. That can help you to achieve your aims at a higher strategic level, but it is within your control. And then playgrounds, cemeteries, allotments, whether you use LED lighting. Do you have community orchards? And I didn't leave it there because dot dot dot. You've all got so many things that you're already doing. Just pop those into your plan. And each council committee, if you have council committees, might consider its biodiversity gain. For example, in planning, highways, parish environment, we have our allotments are managed within our parish environment committee. We have youth and wellbeing, we have our community centre, and each one of these might have one agenda item that just considers what does it think it could do or is doing to conserve and enhance our biodiversity. So it's both what should we be doing less of and what should we be doing more of. Then model biodiversity policies exist. I've already mentioned that, but do have a good search. There are some wonderful examples emerging online. And a quick scoot around having a look, you'll find lots of good work. But I do find that I do want to highlight SLCC and NALC and your local CALP are really good sources. So the great collaboration, the weekly banter sessions. This is how you have to register each week to join that week's session. So that's the link. I don't know if you can copy and paste it, or I can copy and paste it into the chat. And I really wanted to leave a lot of time for questions. So the one of the nuggets of conclusion really is working collectively as a sector, supporting each other along the way. And my final slide, I think, is final tips and takeaways is we're not alone. We're all in this together. We're all on a continuum of progress. So if you haven't started yet, or you've got counsellors who feel that you're far too busy doing all the other things already, or that it's not really for us, it's for the higher level councils to do, then we've all been there once, and just trying to move it that little bit along the way is great for progress. It's better than not having tried at all. But the important thing I think for success is have fun and feel good about what you're doing and enjoy the product of your hard work and enthusiasm. And I'm going to leave it there so that we can have plenty of time to talk.
Cool. Thank you very much, Amanda. On that point of saying have fun.